Austin Drummond was only 16 when he first entered the prison system. More than a decade later, he walked out a free man. But less than a year after his release, 4 members of a single family were found shot to death, and a 7-month-old baby was left crying in a stranger's driveway. Austin Drummond was accused of that brutal crime. The same man who once shared smiling photos from behind bars, holding alcohol and snacks, surrounded by comfort and chaos. Now, prosecutors want him executed. Law enforcement calls him dangerous. But some are pointing fingers at the prison system itself. Did 13 years behind bars truly rehabilitate Austin, or did it teach him how to destroy lives more efficiently? What happened inside those prison walls that could have shaped this outcome? And could this tragedy have been stopped before it even began? This is the story of Austin Drummond's life in prison, and how it may have led directly to one of Tennessee's most shocking family murders. Austin Drummond's criminal path began long before the murders made headlines. At just 16 years old, he was arrested in 2013 for armed robbery in Tennessee. But what shocked authorities wasn't just the robbery, it was what came after. He was accused of threatening jurors during his trial. That led to additional charges and a reputation that followed him into the prison system. He was sentenced to 13 years and entered the West Tennessee State Penitentiary as a teenage felon. But instead of maturing behind bars, his prison record showed something else entirely: defiance and violence. Over the years, Drummond faced at least 27 disciplinary actions inside. These weren't for minor infractions. He was caught with weapons, involved in assaults, and linked to prison gang activity. Prosecutors later confirmed that he was associated with the Vice Lords, a known gang inside and outside prison walls. At one point, he was charged with attempted murder while still incarcerated. And yet, in 2024, Austin Drummond was released. District Attorney Danny Goodman publicly opposed his release. He called Drummond a threat to society, warning that his history of violence and his gang ties made him unstable and dangerous. That warning was ignored. Drummond walked free after serving nearly 13 years. But what the public didn't know was that his past was still with him, quietly growing, evolving, and waiting. Was it just a matter of time before something far worse would happen? While most inmates endure strict rules, stripped-down conditions, and constant surveillance, Austin Drummond appeared to live by a different set of standards. During his time inside West Tennessee State Penitentiary, photos surfaced showing Drummond in a surprisingly relaxed environment. He was seen posing for selfies with snacks, alcohol bottles, and a Roku streaming device. These images weren't leaked. They were posted to social media from inside the prison, reportedly by Drummond himself or other inmates. Security experts who reviewed the footage called it shocking. Some suggested that guards may have turned a blind eye, or worse, been complicit. Alcohol, electronics, and smartphones are strictly banned behind bars. Yet Drummond had access to all three. He wasn't hiding his comfort, he was documenting it. This wasn't a one-time lapse in protocol. It painted a picture of an inmate who didn't fear consequences, surrounded by contraband, connected to the outside world, and potentially backed by gang protection. Drummond seemed to enjoy more freedom inside than many do outside. Instead of being rehabilitated, he may have been emboldened. His environment rewarded control, connections, and status, not change or growth. This raises disturbing questions. If a prison meant to correct criminal behavior actually gave him tools to maintain, and even strengthen, his lifestyle, what kind of person stepped out after 13 years? What does that kind of access, power, and unchecked influence do to someone already convicted of violence? In September 2024, after nearly 13 years behind bars, Austin Drummond was released from prison. Despite a long record of violent behavior and disciplinary actions, his time had technically been served. He walked out as a free man, but his freedom didn't last quietly. Not long after his release, Drummond was charged again, this time for attempted murder, stemming from an incident that reportedly occurred while he was still incarcerated. Shockingly, even with that pending charge, he was granted bond and allowed to remain in the community. There were no mandated check-ins, no strict monitoring, and no psychological evaluations reported. He re-entered society without much oversight, and for months, there were no public signs of trouble. But under the surface, warning signs still lingered. He carried a history of violence, gang affiliations, and access to weapons, all while awaiting trial for a violent felony. And yet, no emergency measures were taken. How does a man with that kind of background, facing an attempted murder charge, remain free without the justice system intervening? Was this a failure in supervision, or a blind spot that would soon prove fatal? On July 29, 2025, a horrifying discovery stunned the quiet community near Reelfoot Lake, Tennessee. Four members of a single family were found shot to death inside their home. The scene was brutal and devastatingly personal. The victims included 21-year-old James Matthew Wilson, his 20-year-old girlfriend Adriana Williams, her 38-year-old mother Courtney Rose, and her 15-year-old brother Braden Williams. All were close-knit, living together under one roof. They had no history of criminal involvement, no known enemies, and no warning signs that something like this could happen. But the most haunting detail wasn't found in the house. Roughly 40 miles away, a 7-month-old baby, the child of Adriana and Matthew, was discovered abandoned in the driveway of a stranger's home. The infant was alive, strapped in a car seat, left under the sun with no explanation. Authorities quickly connected the child to the murder scene. That discovery turned a local homicide case into a statewide emergency. This wasn't a random act of violence. It looked calculated, deliberate. Someone had entered that home, killed for people, taken the baby, and driven miles before leaving her behind. Why did the killer spare the child? Was it a twisted sense of mercy, or a calculated move to delay capture? And what kind of person walks away from a scene like that and sleeps at night? As news of the quadruple murder broke, investigators moved quickly. Within hours, Austin Drummond was identified as the primary suspect. Surveillance footage, witness reports, and digital evidence reportedly linked him to the victim's home. He was also believed to be the last person seen with the infant who was later found abandoned. A multi-agency manhunt began, stretching across West Tennessee. Police issued bulletins, and a blue alert was activated, typically reserved for suspects considered armed, dangerous, and likely to flee. Drummond didn't run far. Less than 48 hours later, he was captured without incident near Union City, Tennessee. He was driving the same vehicle believed to have been used in the abduction. The arrest was calm, almost routine, but the charges were anything but. He was booked on 4 counts of first-degree murder, along with aggravated child endangerment. Investigators remained tight-lipped about the evidence, but the speed of the arrest and confidence of law enforcement made one thing clear: this wasn't guesswork. They believed they had their killer. What led a recently released man to allegedly wipe out nearly an entire household? And could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had just been paying closer attention? Following his arrest, Austin Drummond was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated burglary, 1 count of aggravated child endangerment, and multiple firearm violations. Prosecutors have indicated they will seek the maximum penalty, and the case may qualify for the death penalty under Tennessee law. The motive hasn't been officially confirmed by investigators, but emerging details paint a chilling picture. According to early reports, Drummond had a previous relationship with Adriana Williams, the 20-year-old woman killed in the attack. Sources close to the family suggest there were past tensions, possibly involving jealousy, threats, and unresolved personal disputes. But what triggered the fatal outburst remains unclear. There's speculation that the murders were premeditated, not a spontaneous act of rage, but something planned. The presence of a firearm, the targeted nature of the killings, and the baby being taken but left unharmed all suggest a level of calculation. Drummond is currently being held without bond in the Obion County Jail. He's on suicide watch, isolated from the general population, and awaiting further court proceedings. His next hearing is scheduled in the coming weeks, but there's already a growing demand for justice across the state. Did the system overlook clear red flags? And will Drummond ever fully explain why he chose to destroy 4 lives, including one that may have once cared about him? The public response to the murders was swift and furious. Across Tennessee, outrage poured in, not just over the brutality of the crime, but over how someone like Austin Drummond was free in the first place. People began questioning the decision to grant him bond, especially while he faced an attempted murder charge from a previous prison incident. Many asked how a man with a violent history, gang associations, and behavioral issues in custody was allowed to re-enter society without strict supervision or mental health evaluations. On social media, parents, advocates, and former correctional officers criticized the system that released him, some calling it a failure from every angle: parole, probation, and public safety. Lawmakers are now under pressure. In response, some have called for reforms around violent offenders released on bond, and others are demanding a review of how post-incarceration monitoring is handled in high-risk cases. This tragedy didn't just expose one man's actions, it uncovered a gap in accountability that may have cost 4 people their lives. How many more dangerous individuals are slipping through the cracks? And is the system built to protect us, or to simply release and forget? Austin Drummond's case is more than just a headline. It's a devastating reminder of what can happen when violent behavior goes unchecked. A young couple, a child, and a mother lost their lives. And at the center of it all is a man who was supposed to be under watch, but somehow slipped through every layer of the system. The justice process will play out, but for many, no sentence can undo the damage already done. As we continue to follow this case, one thing remains clear: understanding how and why this happened isn't just about one man's choices. It's about examining the cracks in the very systems we rely on for safety. Thank you for watching Crime Shade. If you believe in fact-based true crime stories that ask deeper questions, subscribe and stay with us. Because sometimes the full truth hides in the parts most people ignore.